I have worked with the STRAW program and Laurette Rogers for the past 17, 18 years, I think. And Laurette started the program as a school teacher and has the passion and drive that has kept this program going, and just is an amazing person. And if you've ever gotten to work with her, you would know what I'm talking about. I feel so lucky to be a part of the program that she started. And anyways, I'm not doing her justice, so I'm going to let her introduce her background better than I will. Laurette Rogers.
Thanks. Do you want to just use the
Jack, would you be disappointed if I use this microphone? I don't want to disappoint you. Hi, well, it's such a pleasure and honor to be here presenting with Leah Jambastiani. And I'll get her back later when we shift to her. But Leah and I are here to talk with you about the STRAW program, Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. And we're really honored to be here, and sorry that Virginia is not here. It was so nice of her to invite us to come. My title now at the STRAW program is STRAW Program Founder and Ambassador, although indeed it was my fourth graders that started this project back in 1993 that you'll hear about that. So anyway, we're excited to be able to talk with you about this important environmental work that we love so much. So these are some of the things we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the STRAW program, of course, and how that affects community engagement and provides early career opportunities for children, and restoration techniques and riparian plant highlights. That's one of my favorite parts. Okay, STRAW provides kindergarten through high school students and teachers with watershed science education, including opportunities to do professional habitat restoration. And we're a collaborator with many partners participating, but our home is Point Blue. So STRAW is a project or a program of Point Blue Conservation Science, which is an environmental nonprofit with 60 years of dedication to conservation of birds, other wildlife, and ecosystems. And we're now focused on adaptation in this time of climate change. So STRAW started as the Shrimp Project, actually, in 1992 when I was teaching fourth grade. That year, I showed a video on endangered species to my class that I did not preview. You have to preview the video, you guys. That's a big mistake. As a teacher, you always preview the video. Well, it was a real downer. It was a very depressing video, and at the end of it, the fourth graders, as I recall, they were laid out on their desks. They were so depressed, and one boy finally raised his hand and he said, "Mrs. Rogers, is there anything we can do to help endangered species?" And what could I say? No. So STRAW was born in that minute. It was like lightning struck, I have to say. And so we wanted to do something. And in the 1990s, there was the California State Adopt a Species program where you could adopt a species and do all kinds of things to help it. And naturalist Merle Sundub, if you know her, she was doing the training at the time, and she gave us 3 local species to choose from: a trout, a salmon, and a shrimp. And we voted, and the shrimp won. And I remember the kids left that day going, "Oh, great, we're going to work on a shrimp." They just weren't excited at all. And what happened was we sent away for the scientific papers, and the kids, fourth grade, they would take a couple of sheets of the scientific papers and go through them slowly. And the more we learned about this species, the more we appreciated particular species, where the more you find out the details, the more you become fascinated, and each species is special. Our particular species is, the males are 1.5 inches long, the females 2.5 inches. Males are transparent so that they camouflage well. Females tend to be rusty red, look like a stick that's been left in the water too long, so good camo. But if a fish tries to eat them, they also have a comb in the top of their head. they can jab the fish in their palate and maybe get away. So they got a lot of good things going on, but they are terrible swimmers. And when there's no plants along the sides of the creek, they have nothing to hold on to. And these shrimp came into our creeks in the time of the dinosaurs and adapted to fresh water, so they cannot have salt water. If they go downstream, they die. So they really need those plants, those willows and other plants, blackberry along the creek, so they can hold on to the roots. Yeah. Okay, let me see what there was one more thing I was going to tell you about that. It is a $10,000 fine to touch one, so don't do that unless you've got money to burn. We researched what to do to help, and guess what? Restoration was the way to help this endangered species, as it is all endangered species. Oh, one last thing I wanted to tell you about it. They're only found, if I didn't say this, in Napa, Sonoma, and Marin counties. They're the last of their genus as well as their species. The only other animal in their genus was Syncarus pasadena that was cemented out of existence under the Rose Bowl. So they're completely extinct. These animals, there's probably 10,000 left in the world. That's not a lot for a shrimp. Okay, to the next one, thanks. You can tell this is an old photo, you guys, from the first restoration. We decided we wanted to restore habitat, but we didn't know how to do it. So luckily we connected with Liza Pernuski. Some of you might know her, a restorationist, and her company, Pernuski Chatham Inc., helped found our project and facilitate the very first restoration. And they gave us our start, and they continue to guide us for the past 3 decades. And then we had the luck in June of 1993 of meeting Betty Young and touring the Circuit Riders Nursery and learning what native plants were from her. And that was such an inspiration and gave us a great start. And the joke, yes, let's give her a hand. Yes, please. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The joke at the time, I don't know if you remember, Betty, is like if you invited the shrimp project to do something, it was guaranteed to rain. And indeed, it was a day in June that we came to see you, and I have photos of you talking to the kids, and they're all wearing rain slickers in June. So it came to be. All right, next one. So it was March 5th, 1993 when we did our first planting willows, sprigging with willows along the Martin Ranch on Stemple Creek in West Petaluma. Paul Martin, the rancher, took a chance on us and worked with us to sprig those willows. And through the years, he's been a guiding light, amazing leader. A lot of the ranchers that worked with us after this did it because he is such an amazing person. One of the things he said about straw is, what we have here is not just rehabilitated creeks, we have rehabilitated people. So then we started connecting with other ranchers because of him and through our partners, always our partners. We really are a collaborative. Okay. And for me and the teacher, there's just lots of learning going on. This project necessitated, for me and the students, we had to acquire and apply scientific knowledge about things like climate change, agriculture, and restoration science. We had to learn how to work in the field, how to work well as a team, right? How to communicate with confidence, all of these new things, and how to get on the telephone and bother Betty Young, asking for the kids would be calling her, asking about plants. So everyone was learning and healing too. And for so many of us, and children included, we have a lot of grief about the degradation of the environment, the nature, and restoration is a way to help heal, not just the land, but ourselves too. And to see species return. For example, for Paul Martin, he wanted what he called the valley quail to come back. They were gone from the land. And after about 15 years of the willows and the other trees taking root and growing, I was there talking with them one day, and skitter, 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 there they are. The quail were back. And, I cried. Last pool was believed to be the last pool of shrimp on Stemple Creek. We did restoration there. And pretty soon Caltrans needed to change this little bridge on Highway 1. The shrimp were under the bridge. They hadn't been there for decades. They had moved downstream because now the willows that the kids planted, the roots had grown into the creek and now they could move downstream. And I cried again, but that's okay. All right, so next one. Well, here's what it looked like after our first restoration. And to me, honestly, I always say these willow sprigs look like big pencils. I'm sorry, Betty, but they don't look like they're going to be doing anything to me. But indeed, after a couple months, they had small branches. And let's go to the next slide. So here's a before picture, before the restoration. You know, there were only 5 species of birds there. That probably doesn't surprise you. I mean, if you were a bird, you probably wouldn't be there either. Let's go to the next one. So 5 years after restoration, the willows have really filled in. Ornithologists come out, they see 28 species of birds. So, you know, what we see is, you know, restoration really works. And I went out there about 5 years ago and it's looking like this now. It's just going great. That dark tree over to the left, that was as big as my finger when we planted it. It's a nice coast live oak. And so after let's see, where am I now? So straw is a multi-benefit program. We're restoring ecosystems and sequestering carbon. And it's gratifying that we have grad students and other researchers now coming out to study carbon sequestration and other subjects. Since my beginning in my classroom, we found that many students are really eager to make a difference in their community. A lot of students want to do things to help, to do work that counts in the real world. And you know, through this community work, a lot of times students find out what their talents are and what they like. They find out what they could do that they didn't know, self-knowledge. And the other thing, of course, is it connects them to nature and gives them a chance to help her out. Through the years, we've seen that the restoration work really can have long-term effects on people, students and other people. So next one. So one of the students in my class, after the project started, Adam Welliver, when he was 9, wrote this: "I always thought that the teacher made the path and the students followed. But in this case, the students made the path and the teacher followed." And I did. I didn't see this project coming. It just kind of came. And it was really amazing to watch what the students wanted to do. We were using project-based learning, if you've ever heard that, as a teaching and learning method in my classroom. It's when students are empowered to explore, you know, their kind of direct their own learning and explore their own questions and tackle issues. Okay, next one. And then a girl in my class wrote this. I call this the dot quote because we'll see what you think. She wrote, "I think this project changed everything I thought we could do. I always thought kids meant nothing. I feel that it did show me that kids can make a difference in the world and that we are not just little dots." And then what happened was about 5 years ago, she wrote me an email. I hadn't heard from her since 4th grade. She was 27 now. And she wrote and said, quote, "My memories of 4th grade are the fondest that I can recall. It influenced me more than I can explain. I hope that as I enter graduate school, I can experience that same thrill and excitement I had when I was 10 years old. Shy as I was, timid as ever, your class has stuck with me more than any other over the years." So you can see these kind of changes. I mean, these kind of experiences can change a person. So some students begin to explore science careers as they work alongside scientists. It kind of happens naturally that way. And more than one child has found their calling or field of interest on a restoration day. Career education happens naturally. And one of our favorite stories is, you know, I used to play Irish music. I played the drum, and I was sitting one day with the woman who played the flute. And she didn't know what I did for a living, but she told me, you know, she said, you know, my daughter just switched majors at college. Now she's going to major in environmental science. I said, well, why did she do that? She said, well, she did this restoration project in 7th grade, you know, and it was the straw project at Miller Creek. So doing all this restoration, as you probably can imagine, requires many people of all ages with education and training. And in addition to the kindergarten through high school students and teachers trained to work with us, STRAW has an 11-month apprenticeship program for young adults. And we love to welcome them in and give them a variety of educational experiences, like learning how to address a circle of students in preparation for restoration. In addition, Point Blue is extremely focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues and ways to improve what we're doing, how we do it, and who is doing it. Straw conservation educator Alba Estrada Lopez began our community college conservation internship to help bring people of color into the environmental field and to reduce barriers so all can participate. Last year, this is a summer program. It was the third time we've given the program. 22 community college students participated in this program. And we also have Watershed Week. Maybe you've heard of it. It's for teachers, and it's free of charge. All our services are free of charge. This year's Watershed Week was focused on beavers, a great topic. Students and teachers with Straw have been building beaver dam analogs, a beaver dam, our version of a beaver dam in the Sierras to help rewater mountain meadows. But this was a beaver dam analog that was done, it was actually built by the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center staff on the Poncha Ranch out in Tamaulipas. And what was especially exciting to me was they told us, they said, if you hadn't done the restoration there, 2 decades ago, we wouldn't have the willows to build the beaver dam analog. So it's really fun seeing how, the restorations from long ago are feeding into new restorations and new projects. So Watershed Week is really important for many teachers. They say, this is how I like to start my year. And they love to learn. One teacher told us that before joining Straw, she never knew what native plants were. She thought that they were just plants that Native Americans use, which they are, but she didn't understand the whole evolutionary thing, and all of that it was new to her. And then one year we took our teachers to the Sonoma Baylands for Watershed Week, did some plant transects. We were out there in the wetlands transition zone, and one teacher told us, she said, I had no idea that this was here. Not only that, I didn't even know that this kind of habitat existed. So just the importance of Watershed Week and getting people out, lots of learning. So 31 years have gone by now, and I still look like this. I think it's amazing, don't you, Betty? Yeah, it's been a lot of years. And here's what's been accomplished so far. Over 990 restoration days, so really pushing 1,000 there. Over 60,000 students have planted over 85,000 native plants. And we're pretty much focused on restorations in the Bay Area, or we have been, 31 years, of course, here in the North Bay. Over 10 years now in the South Bay, working on ranches and things down there. In the East Bay, we've been there probably, 3 or 4 years, I think. And we are now currently spreading work, and so that Straw has been working, not covering the whole thing, but in 15 counties now in California. It's kind of out of control. And so now I get to turn it over to Leah. And so now I've got the microphone, and I get to introduce her. She's a senior project manager and a driving force behind the Straw program. I have to say, I leapt at the chance to present tonight just because I'm so proud to be here with her. She has strength like probably no one else I know. And when I say strength, I mean physical, heart, emotional, intellectual, and her dedication to this planet knows no bounds. And I'm so proud to be here with you, Leah. And we're all lucky to learn from her. So, Leah.
Okay. Oh, let me do that.
No, I can do it. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Laurette. So I'm going to talk a little more specific about our restoration program that we have. And starting us off, just wanted to cover some of the different things that our program does, because they think, oh, you guys just put plants in the ground, but there's a lot more than putting plants in the ground that goes into it. So this is a list of some of the things we do, everything from helping to start plan the project down to the end where we're keeping them alive during the plants are doing. I wanted to give an overview of the restoration cycle, just because I'm not sure where everyone's background is and how familiar you are with the entire process of doing a native plant restoration. So it really starts usually with the planting plan or planting design, so that you have a list of plants that know what needs to go into the ground. Someone comes up with that, and sometimes we do, sometimes our partners do. And then from there, you need to get the seeds and process them, propagate them, growing them out in the nurseries, or sometimes we do direct seeding, and then all these different steps to get down to getting the plants in the ground and keeping them alive. We use monitoring. I don't talk a lot about it during this talk, but we use monitoring for adaptive management so that we can see how did the plants do, what survived, and then it contributes to longer term data sets so that we can kind of decide, wow, it's actually not a good idea to plant shrubs later in the spring. They don't make it very well. So the first step I just wanted to cover here is our seed collection and processing. And I was first hired as a nursery manager with straw, and I had a previous work doing native plant restoration, but I just wanted to note I got to attend Betty Young, Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy plant propagation class, and so also got to participate in some seed collection and learn about some of the ethics of seed collection, which we have adopted for our program as well. So it's really important that when you are collecting seeds out in the wild, that you're not taking too much of something, so that we don't accidentally decimate a population of that local seed so that it can't reproduce during that time frame. And also it's really good to get different genetics from different plants in the area too. So we think about genetic diversity and ethics for the collecting. Next, we are growing the plants. So you're storing the seeds, you have to clean them and store them and weigh them. And then you're growing the seeds out in the field, or growing the seeds in the nursery. Some of them, gosh, I didn't mean to go into a nursery talk. We'll skip ahead. And then they are often kept in the shade house anywhere between, I would say, 6 months and 2 years. It depends on how large the plant needs to get. The trees and shrubs take longer. So I would say probably 1 to 2 years, but some of the other plants, they can be ready in 3 to 6 months, depending on what you're trying to grow. From there, we're going to put the plants in the ground, and our program works with classes, as Laurette told you all about. So we coordinate with the classes to come out, and the plants get a heat-treated mulch and or weed mat to protect the plant. We implement what we call best management practices to hopefully stop the spread of plant pathogens. So this is a picture here of one of our technicians. He is pressure washing all of our tools and equipment here so that we have them clean. And then after he pressure washes them, they get sprayed down with isopropyl alcohol, so that we're basically, if you can imagine, like keeping your surfaces kitchen sanitary clean. That's what we're doing here, because there are plant pathogens, particularly Phytophthora, that are spread through any dirt that might be remain on those tools, and we don't want to do more harm than good. So if we're accidentally bringing what we don't know is contaminated dirt from a tool onto another site, or from plants onto another site, then we could potentially cause massive die-off of plants. So we do everything that we can to prevent and not do harm. We then are maintaining those plants through the dry summer months. Some areas have natural water year round, and then maybe we don't have to water them, but often they need some kind of watering to get through the dry summer months. So all of the plants usually get watered, sometimes every week, depending on the species and the site, sometimes every other week, but they all usually get some kind of water to keep them alive. And then we're looking, like I mentioned before, to check on the plants to see how they're doing. And then we use that for assessing for future plantings, and also reporting back to our granting agencies and partners to show how successful the project was. We have 3 native plant nurseries that we run, and one is at Novato Valens in Novato at the Army base, the old Hamilton Army base, another one at Casa Grande High School, and at San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And I'm just going to show you where they're located because you might not be familiar with. So John Shribs was a teacher, biology teacher who started a native plant nursery at Casa Grande High School. And so he retired, and then we picked it back up and run a nursery there, and the high school students, horticulture and biology students, come out and help us grow plants. Then we have a nursery at San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. That is actually a ranch property that the Wildlife Refuge owns and manages. And so we propagate plants there. And then the Novato Baylands Nursery is specifically for the Hamilton wetlands and Belmarine Keys wetlands that are owned by the State Coastal Conservancy. And so all the plants grown there are used for projects at the Novato Baylands. We use a variety of different planting methods, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these. Pictured here is actually my son during the pandemic. He is putting in a seed basket and probably acorn seeds at Crane Creek Regional Park. We are using a core mat that's a coconut fiber mat and a degalvanized hardware cloth that is used as a seed basket so that the gophers and rodents don't get in and eat the acorn before it's able to grow into a tree. The acorns, the first part of using direct seed acorns, and a lot of people in the Milo Baker chapter have helped us with this, helped overall with the effort to propagate and collect and propagate acorns, is actually harvesting the acorns from the tree. So you're gonna check to see if the acorn is ripe enough, and one good test is actually to break it off of the cap, snap it off the cap. So if it comes off easily, it's good to go. When it comes off, it actually breaks off part of the acorn. It's not quite ripe enough at that point. So you would need to wait until it's ready, till it's ripe, till it cleanly and easily breaks off with the cap. And ideally you harvest it straight from the tree, not wait for it to drop to the ground, so that you're not, like I mentioned, plant pathogens, but also insects get into the acorns. And so another thing that we do is check to make sure every acorn doesn't have holes in it. And the last thing you would do is, well, not last, but next you would do a float test. So pictured here is actually what you can imagine, a bucket of water or a container of water, and you put all the acorns in. The ones that sink to the bottom are good to go, and any that float, you're gonna toss them and get rid of them because they're no good. They'll have insect infestation and won't make it. Point Blue Conservation Science has a oak planting guide. I just wanted to highlight it in case you're interested in some of the techniques for planting oak trees in California. And so you can, I know that's kind of a long website, but if you just Google Point Blue Oak Planting Guide, you'll be able to get the PDF, and that's available to anybody. And so they just talk about some of the techniques for planting oaks. We use plant protection at different plant protection for different sites, and some of them don't need plant protection. But if it's often in a pasture where deer might really get to it, if that's going to be, or rabbits might be a problem, we use cages or other things to protect the plants so they don't have a lot of herbivory. And so we do different style cages for different animals. So if I have a cow that might be pressing and rubbing straight on the plant, that's going to get a much beefier cage with more T-posts than if I might have like a deer that might come up. I might just use chicken wire and bamboo, and they don't really impact the cage too much. One other method that we do is sprigging willows and dogwood branches. So you're going to find your straightest branch that you can. You're going to harvest it from the tree. You want to get them at least 3 feet long because it needs to go 2 feet down into the ground and 1 foot above. So for you will take that branch. You're going to take all the lateral branches off of the sprig. And so you're just going to have a nice straight pole. It'll have no branches off the side. And then you use what's pictured here. Julio's holding a rock bar, and you're going to go 2 feet down into the ground to make a nice perfect hole. And then you're going to put your willow sprig down. And I did add a little detail if you're interested. I think willows are just really amazing because
they grow really easily as long as they have a source of water. Same with dogwoods, as long as they have a source of water, and they go really fast. And so like you saw from Laurette's pictures, you know, all of a sudden, 5 years later, there's these tall trees growing the size of the creek. So they're really vegetation established and also often very successful as long as there's some water for them. And all you need is a branch, so you can harvest it from another willow tree locally and then sprig them straight into the ground. And often if there's water, then they don't need summer water either, hopefully not. So I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail on some of these plants. These are some successful plants that we frequently use for restorations in Sonoma County. And I just want to note that every area has its own unique plants that they're going to be successful for that area. So I'm not recommending all of these, say, for a redwood riparian forest, but for a lot of the riparian areas around here, oak woodlands, these are common species that we see used and being successful. Okay, so I mentioned before willows. There are a lot of different willows that are in Sonoma County. These are 3 of the most common ones that we're using, unless you go out to the coast and there's a couple different species out there. But so these are sandbar, arroyo, and red willow. So there are some really common ones here. I can't exclude valley oaks. I know a lot of people are familiar with them. They're just these big, gorgeous, giant trees, provide so much for wildlife in the area. And these ones are actually at Crane Creek Regional Park, where we had a project and we did some seed collection and direct seeding with those out there. You saw the picture before of us planting out there. See, next one, it's the most common oak tree around here. It's the coast live oak. It's evergreen, so it's green all year. It doesn't lose its leaves. And then I have, and I wanted to know, I have samples of, I did coast live oak and buckeye. So if you wanted to see, you're welcome actually to grab, if you want any acorn seeds there or acorns or buckeyes, you're welcome to take some. I harvested a few today just for demonstration purposes. So California buckeye is such a beautiful tree in that it has these really big leaves. It has these giant pink cone flowers. I don't have a picture, but sorry, I'm gonna get a picture next time it's in flower, but really big pink cone flowers. And then in the kind of spring, and then it's going to, right now actually is when the time it has these big buckeye seeds that are there on the tree. And most of the trees are kind of going bare right now. So then at one point, all you'll see is these things hanging off the tree. So it's kind of a unique plant. Definitely one of the favorites. Oh, and sorry, and that it's also one of those few plants that we do direct seed. And you might ask, why do you do direct seed? Why don't you just get a container plant and, you know, grow it in the nursery? Well, I personally feel like their tap roots grow so fast, it's really hard for them to stay in a container in a pot for very long. And so it's the best thing is to get it straight into the ground so it can put out its taproot right in the ground instead of having to keep it in a little container plant because they're not really big enough to hold on to it for very long. Okay, Oregon ash, another favorite here. It's not a very showy plant, but it grows pretty fast, and I have seeds and a branch of it over there if you want to check that one out. Then I have box elder, another fast growing riparian tree, and it's in the maple family. And I would say it grows a little bit faster than the big leaf maple, which is my next one over here. And they also have the samurai seed, which is kind of cool. You can see it on the left there. And the maple leaves can get up to 12 inches wide. So get pretty big, those leaves, and they're nice, pretty leaf. Coyote brush, fan favorite. For the wildlife and insects, not always the favorite for everybody because it can be dominating sometimes in disturbed environments, especially if there's not herbivory or other types of management to control it. So I've worked with one landowner who originally they got this big ranch property in West Marin, and they took all the cows off, and they said, we're not gonna have cows on here. And guess what? The coyote bush covered the whole hillside. All of a sudden they're like, what do we have? We just have like a thicket of coyote brush. They put the cows back on to help manage the property. So it will take over sometimes if you don't manage. Blue elderberry is a common one. People have probably heard of medicinally, maybe elderberry syrup. Has lots of really great rich in nutrients and antioxidants. These are pictures that I took from my yard. I grew elderberry and harvested the berries and made my own syrup. And so it's a fun one if you ever have space. They do get pretty big and they're deciduous, so they'll lose their leaves. But they're fun. The birds like them and have great medicinal uses for people too. This is another plant. It's a picture from my yard too. Spice bush, Calicanthus occidentalis. It has these beautiful red flowers. Oh my gosh, they're stunning. And every part of the bush has a kind of a spicy, unusual scent. So if you weren't sure what it was and you took the roots out, you rubbed them, they have a spicy scent. The leaves have a spicy scent. The stem has a spicy scent. California blackberry. It is, it's really similar in some ways, and people can misidentify and they can hybridize, but we won't talk about that, to the non-native blackberry that's in the area, the invasive Himalayan blackberry. But it has much smaller thorns. It doesn't get as big and brambly, so it's kind of a more delicate blackberry. The berries are edible and great for wildlife and humans alike. And it's more of a ground cover. I'd say kind of a vine. It can trail along. And then California rose. I think it's great also for, you can make tea out of the rose hips. I think some people are like, I didn't know I could just use the rose hips for that. And you can. And it's great for wildlife as a nectar plant too. And then we have stream dogwood or red osier dogwood. And this was one that I planted in my yard. It formed a really nice thicket here and kind of almost like a hedge. It will regrow from underground runners. And you can also just sprig it in the ground like a willow. So it doesn't, I mean, I had maybe a more wet yard, but it wasn't along the stream and it did just fine. And it has really small kind of flowers. Coffeeberry gets these really black berries on it. It's an evergreen shrub. It's super slow growing though. So if you are hoping for a shrub soon, maybe wait like 10 years, because I actually forgot about it. And then all of a sudden, like 12 years later, I had this thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot I put this thing in the ground. And it will eventually get there, but they're slow growing. And then Toyon, this one can get really big. It says 6 to 15. I think I've seen it at 25 feet. I don't think my height there is accurate, but it can get pretty big, like a small tree. And berries are good for wildlife. And this one was taken, I took these pictures at Pepperwood Preserve, did some collecting. Which I don't want to forget to mention is we do all local seed collection. And so we're always looking for spots to harvest seeds. So if you know about like a property that we might be able to come get harvest the seeds of the native plants, please reach out to me. I have some cards here, but we're always looking for good sources of local native plants. And then last, I just wanted to acknowledge that we couldn't do it without all of our partners and funders that keep us going and support us. And so I have a lot of people here. Just so grateful to everybody. We've been working with a lot of these people for the start of the project, and we couldn't do it without them. And I think that's about it. Thank you, everybody. And if there's any questions, we're here.
Question, please.
There's a handout here.
So I have a quick question about
It's the rose, California native rose.
The native
Um,
rose. Mhm.
It's, I do go to other farms and, see how people are growing things. And one of the things is actually it's the big farms, it's get some granted to make a hedges and habitats. It's like, it's for their farm. And the rose, it's actually, they're not so happy because it's just moves all the beds and everywhere. It's in their farm.
Oh, 'cause it
can
will
be
grow.
really-
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can be really, it's like problematic more than it's like, how we can just keep. How do we use rose? It's in our garden, it's just regular, it's like,
Mm.
if you wanna use in our garden, how do you
Yeah.
use them? Any suggestion?
Should I don't know, do they work at the same time or?
They should.
Okay.
Put it on.
Oh, you did? Okay, no.
Okay,
Okay,
now?
all right. So I wouldn't plant rose in my yard. Cause it does, they do form thickets and they'll spread. In fact, when we put them in the ground, they'll often come up under the weed mat or under the mulch that we put down and they'll just be popping up around, which is what we want, but it's not necessarily what I would put in like where you might not want that. So, yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know if you have
I
other
didn't know
thoughts.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it does spread. It makes nice thickets. I also think, and maybe Betty, I'm like someone else there, it can hybridize with other plants. And so I sometimes wonder if that's why they might be more aggressive, but I don't know. They're aggressive on their own, yeah. Yeah,
I think it maybe has to do with the individual rows. That's very well behaved in my. Occasionally, but generally.
Mhm.
Are you talking about the California, you show the California rose or the Floribunda that is all over the place in the east? I don't know that one.
I don't know about the East Coast species. For the one that I pictured the California rose here, Rosa californica.
And it will act invasively also, is that the point?
I mean, that's what it naturally does. I don't know if I would call it invasive, but it will be like a thicket and put down runners. So that's what the plant does. Some plants, that's what we want them to do, right? Is to spread and take over and grow.
Why was somebody planning? You see it on inches. People who brought them from home,
But it hasn't spread all over. I mean, it's all over.
Yeah.
The screen.
I've seen it more.
Yep. Like you
Want to take the mic, Betty?
Switch on something. And it, just like the California rose, if it's got water, it'll spread.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's great to hear that. I just have one question. Was discussing plants and whether something should be planted, and the suggestion was the California buckeye, and somebody said, "Oh, they're poisonous to bees." Is that?
Sure, I can take that, yeah. So, or Laurette can
No,
too,
don't go
either
ahead.
of us. The buckeye is actually great for native bees, but it is poisonous to honeybees, so like European honeybees.
Everybody should know that honeybees are not native.
Yes, sorry, so the native bees are fine, the non-native European honeybees, it is toxic for them.
What hummingbirds?
Huh.
How about hummingbirds? Are they,
I've never heard any
I've
problem.
never heard of it in Tom's. I mean, I would think if it's a native plant, native hummingbird, I'm assuming they've probably adapted and evolved with them over the years to know what they can or cannot.
take nectar from.
Baylands nursery still inside, or were you able to move it outside?
Yes, so yes, good question. Yeah, so we took over the Novato Baylands nursery from Christina McWhorter. And she she got chronic fatigue and she could no longer do that anymore, so asked us if we could help her. And, so yeah, there is a shade house there. We do not have a greenhouse, so sometimes if we really want like a warm seed starting, we will bring it inside and put it under warm lights. And then we have like an outdoor grow.
Are you still doing restoration
Yes,
at Hamilton?
Hamilton, and then there's a second area called Belmar Keys. And there's gonna be a even larger project from, like, they're gonna expand tidal action in the next 10 years. For a second phase of the Belmar project.
You should do a field trip.
Yeah, there's been some exciting birds coming back to the plants that we've been planting. Oh, you should tell. You should tell. Okay. All right, it was really exciting last week. There was a Ridgeways rail, mother and baby seen out at the Novato Baylands. And besides that, oh, and a sorrow, how do you say it? Sorrow rail was seen. We have a video of the whole thing. But more than that, the plovers also are using the land now that it's getting more restored. And so and I think a white pelican was released there the other day too. So it's becoming an area that birds are starting to repopulate in a big way because of the change in plants.
Yeah, thanks. We had an exciting week. So Ridgeways rail, our endangered species that occurs in the salt marsh harvest mouse, or sorry, in the salt marsh. And they are in the outer marsh, but they've never been seen in the marsh. And we were like really far in the channel, down this channel. We couldn't believe we saw it.
First sighting,
Yeah,
first
so
sighting.
that was exciting. And then the second one was we had a burrowing owl at our other site.
Oh, that's
too. We were
right,
like,
that's
"Oh,
right."
what an exciting week. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.